All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships podcast. And today I am here with Alyssa. Alyssa, welcome. So awesome to have you here today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me on your show. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah. Well, and what's kind of cool is you and I got to have a conversation in advance because, I tell you, it makes it, I mean, especially when I'm talking about relationships, I
Mhm.
love getting to know entrepreneurs, finding out what they're working on, what they're excited about, and just what really makes them tick, and you and I got to have that conversation. And I'm like, wow, you know what, Alyssa? Yeah, we definitely need to do an interview for the podcast if you're open for it, because you shared some pretty awesome stuff with me, and I know that your story is going to impact the lives of the entrepreneurs who get to hear about it and stuff. And so
Nothing better than that.
that's right. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of start off by turning over to you and letting you share a little bit about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you to do what you do, and kind of just set some context and let the listeners know who you are.
All right, love it. My name is Alyssa Marshall. I am the co-founder of a software called Owlish. That's Owlish with 2 W's. And what we do over there, which is what makes me tick right now, is we help non-technical creators put up amazing looking, awesome looking online courses on their websites, regardless of what platform they're using as their website, without the help of a developer. And I got to where I am now doing this because I've been a non-technical course creator for close to a decade and was very frustrated with all the back and forths that I had to do with my developer to get my course up on WordPress or updated on WordPress, and just it was a little bit more than I wanted to do, let's just say. And I just felt like there had to be a better way to do this. Like, I didn't want to use a subdomain. I didn't want to feel disempowered in a sense that I had to go through a developer to do these things. I just wanted to be able to, like, I'm an independent woman. I wanted to like go and figure it out myself. And it was a little beyond me, let's just say. So that's how my partner Kevin and I created Owlish. It really was a platform that ticked all of our wish lists, line items for what we wanted a course platform to be: easy and just insert it anywhere into any web platform, just like simple and looks nice and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's what I do now. And it's what keeps me super excited every day.
Nice, nice. I'll tell you, I'm like you, Alyssa. I am not a tech person at all.
Mm.
I love having conversations. There's things that we're just like really good at and that feed us and that we love doing. And dealing with tech stuff is not one of those things for me. That just, so I can totally relate to that.
I
So
am the exact same way.
yeah.
Exact same way.
So, and what was kind of cool is, like, from our initial conversation and finding more about what you do, I was already able to make a connection for you, which is really cool. And that, and I will, I know you were thanking me for that before we got on the started the interview today, but I'll tell you, that's what feeds me too. That's what feeds me too, is I just love connecting great people, because together we can accomplish far more than any of us could possibly achieve on our own and stuff. And so, yeah.
That is so very true. And you are such a connector. And you know what? It's so great to see is that you do this like online,
Yeah.
because I feel like making connections was easier and a little bit more prevalent, let's say, when our lives are more offline. But then as you go online, it's kind of like I feel like it's kind of a lost art a little bit. And then, but I see you and you're like, the moment I think the first like 5 or 10 minutes, you were like, oh, I have this guy you need to talk to. I was like, okay, let's do it.
Well,
I love it.
I'm going to bring something up here, because it is really, especially on a podcast like this, where the whole goal is to really, let people like yourself share your story and your experience around somebody in your life, a relationship that you have had that has been extremely valuable to you, with the intention of, for the listeners, really inspiring them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful relationships. And as far as for entrepreneurs, and I've long believed this, that relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. And I know that the gentleman that I was telling you about when we spoke last, I was like, I got to level with you, Alyssa, because I haven't spoken with this gentleman in almost 5 years. And so I said, I'm not going to promise you anything because I haven't spoken with him in a long time. But what I will promise you is I'll send an email and just see if I can get back in touch with him. And I think it was about 12 hours. He responded and he's like, wow, Kev, great to hear from you. And I've CC'd my right-hand guy here, and like, let's definitely connect for us too and just get an update on what you've been up to. And so, our relationship picked up right where it left off. We didn't miss a beat. And now I'm back in touch with them as well. And of course, after, I will tell you what, I can only imagine what's happened for him and his company in the last 5 years. I know what's happened in my life in 5 years, and it's been a lot. We're in a dramatically different spot now than we were. And so I'm excited to, so our conversation also just gave me the opportunity to reconnect with a friend that I hadn't spoken in a while. And so,
Yeah.
and it's just, this is the way that relationships work. When we treat people the way that we'd want to be treated, we build these relationships and they last us a lifetime. And so
Yeah.
with that, I'd like to just like shift gears a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of all the listeners. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person? And Alyssa, I'm really excited to have you share your story, your experience around this.
I do have that person. It is exactly one person that comes to my mind. His name is Steve. His name is Steve Halls,
Oh,
and he is a very, very close friend actually to my husband. And so that's how I got to know him.
okay.
And so I met him when I was in dental school. So I'm a dentist. I earned my degree in 2012, and we probably met him in 2011. That's my guess. It's been a while, but my husband and I met in 2010, so around that time.
Okay.
And I was in school. I was in UCLA. He was living in the LA area, and so was my husband. And that's how we all met, or him and I met. My husband and him were already really close friends, and I was getting closer to graduation. He's like a very lovely kind of guy. He's the guy that whoever meets him will walk away from him with just a really fond feeling about him, because he's the kind of guy that he has his heart open at all times, like towards anybody, whoever it is that he meets. Like, he just open up a conversation and he's just present with you and he's really there with you and he's just lovely. Anyway, so I meet this guy. I'm like, whoa, who's this guy? Like, he's really nice. I love him. And he introduces me to this book called The 4-Hour Work Week, which now is such popular. It's the kind of book that so many people quote as like the book that opened their perspectives. Well, it was absolutely the same way for me. I was in dental school. I didn't even think that there was a possibility that I could be doing anything other than being a dentist. I don't know why I was thinking that, but it was like I had a narrow path in my mind. Well, I went to dental school, I graduate, I work as a dentist, and that's just what you do. And maybe I'll become like an entrepreneurial dentist and have a few offices. This was the extent to which I imagined my life. And he's like, well, listen to this book. And so I start to listen to it at school. I was in my final year, and so I had a lot of lab work to do. And I would have these like earphones in my ears while I'm like making patient dentures, stuff like that in the lab. It's like 11 p.m. And I'm doing my work and I'm listening, and I'm like, my mind is open. It's blown open, because here is a guy that I've never heard of with a book that has a really scammy, awful looking title. But the things that he's talking about in the book was just so different.
Mm.
Like it was such a different mentality because I guess I was more in the follow the herd mentality. Like I did pretty well in the herd. Went to dental school, right? But it
Oh,
was really
yeah.
like follow this prescribed path for you. And that's what I was diligently following. And here's this guy saying, no, you don't have to do that. And, like how to like validate a business idea and outsource and get a VA and all this. I was just like, excuse me, it was just so foreign. And I remember I was listening to this book all of the time, driving to school, back from school in the elevator. And I remember telling my husband, because my husband, it's so funny because Steve had told my husband to listen to this book too, and he hadn't. It had been years since Steve was telling my husband about it, and he didn't listen. I think it was a title that turned him off. But here I am, and I like started listening to it. And I tell my husband or then boyfriend, this is like the Bible for life. Like my perception and my entire plan for the future, I don't know what it's going to be, but I think it's shifting.
Mhm.
I literally said, this is the Bible, like that I'm listening to, and you must listen. And during that time, also, I was kind of accidentally starting a business, and this business has nothing to do. Well, it kind of was a precursor to what led me to start Owlish, but I was helping all of these dentists that were trained from other countries
Uh-huh.
pass some tests that they needed to pass in the US. And I got into this because I was also a dentist that had trained in another country first. So I'm from
Okay.
South Korea. I graduated from dental school there. And then I came over here and I had to go back to school. And that getting into that program is extremely competitive. And the training, the additional training that I had to do to like prep plastic teeth, but still teeth to the specs that the US universities wanted to see was so much work. And I knew what it was like. And so when I passed this, and I passed it really well, like I got accepted at a lot of different schools. And so my friends started to reach out to me, and then their friends started to reach out to me. And it was a very organic process. And so I started to help them, and it was a start of something. I didn't know what, and I really didn't even think that there was an official business here, but like, I was helping people. Anyway, so that's how I ended my dental school, kind of dreaming of other possibilities and just kind of helping people on the side. But still, after I graduated, we moved to Austin, Texas, and I started working as a dentist because, like that's what I do still,
That was the
even though I
path
listen
you
to
were
the
on at the
corporate work.
time.
It was, and I hadn't had my breakthrough thing yet.
Mhm.
Like it was just not there. And then Steve decides to visit us from California. And he comes to Austin. And I remember we're like lounging by the pool that was in our complex. And he goes, hey, I have this. I became aware of this program. It was from Market Samurai. I don't think they're around anymore, but back then they were pretty popular, and they had this like 30-day challenge that was free, that if you follow through it, by the end of it, you're supposed to have a business. And the
Okay.
very first few days of the Market Samurai challenge was doing keyword research utilizing their software, which showed like competition and search volume and things like that.
Mhm.
And honestly, the dental business didn't even like, I didn't even punch those keywords in until later. You know what I was punching in there? Juice cleanse, making smoothies, and just completely. And I was just like, dreaming what could be possible, right? And like everything I put in, it turns out like competition is really high. And then he goes, hey, aren't you doing this dental thing? I was like, yeah, well, I am, but like it's just, it's not exactly like a business. It's like, just punch in some keywords. And so I start punching them in, and they turn out good. Like Market Samurai is giving me a green light, and I'm like, oh my God, like, do I actually have, like, I've started something already. Like, I just have to make it official and work on this as the business, and
Mhm.
I've got it. And so, yeah, I gotta say, like, if it wasn't for the interactions I had with Steve and him just kind of nudging me just enough to open my eyes
Yeah.
to the possibilities of the things that not only did I not know, but I didn't know that I didn't know them.
Yeah.
So they were just like not, I couldn't have turned my eyes in that direction if I wanted to, because I didn't even know that such a direction existed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if it wasn't for Steve, I am fairly certain by now I would have my own private practice and I'm seeing dentists, working as a dentist every day, complaining that my back hurts and that my eyesight's going bad. But yeah,
Yeah.
thanks to Steve, I retired at 31 and here I am now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I can't remember exactly what year the 4 Hour Work Week came out. I think it
Mm.
was like maybe 2005, 2006, something like that. I know that I got invited to this intimate get together in Maui in
Mhm.
2007, and Tim was there. And he was telling us how he did not like the title of the book, the 4 Hour Working. He did not like it, but they had done a bunch of research, and one of the tools they used was at the time was a relatively new tool, which was the Google AdWords platform. They ran these split tests on Google AdWords. That's how they came up with the title for the 4 Hour Work Week and stuff. And
And
so
it was a really smashing success,
yes,
right?
it was. Yes, it was. And I know when I read that book, I mean, I kind of had a similar experience to you. I'm like, wow, I'd never even considered this stuff before. How cool is this? And I won't say that I work a 4 Hour Work Week, but I will say all these years later, I have so much control, intentional over my time,
Yes.
and that reading that book was definitely one of the first, exposures I had to this whole idea of like, what, we don't have to do what's considered the norm.
Yes.
So huge. So if I remember right, so what came from that?
Mhm.
If I remember from talking with you before, you ended up creating this training and stuff around. So tell us kind of what happened once you had this interaction with Steve and like some of the things that transpired.
Oh my gosh, so many things happened, right? So we made an actual business out of helping international dentists pass these tests that they needed to pass.
Okay.
So it's called the bench test. You have to cut plastic teeth to like really exacting standards. And it's just so very different from what's taught abroad.
Okay.
There's a huge disconnect. And that was, and still is, because that business is still going, is the pillar of the business. That is the biggest reason people seek us out, is that. So I made an online course about it. I did not start from an online course though, because dentistry isn't usually taught online.
Uh-huh.
And so I started to help somebody locally. She asked for help and I was
Okay.
like, well, sure, I can, drive over there a couple times a week and just help you pass this test a little bit. And she passed. And while I was there, she actually said, hey, do you know that there's a couple of guys in Colorado that are bringing applicants into their houses and teaching this. They're just doing it's like an unofficial training center, but a training center out of their apartment. These are dental school people. They're students of a dental school and they're just running this out of their apartment. I was just like, what? I can do that? Because until then, I was aware of an institute that did that, but it was a very formal business. It's like a
Uh-huh.
place that you would go and there will be a bunch of chairs, dental chairs and mannequins so that you can practice for this test. But like the idea that I could even do this at home was like completely mind blown, right? So I talked to my then husband about this and he's like, we should try. I'm like, yeah, it sounds a little crazy. We lived in an apartment. Didn't even have a house. We lived in an apartment. It's like, so you're saying in our gated apartment, we're going to bring in people, make them fly into Austin, Texas, because pretty sure Austin, Texas alone is not going to have enough applicants to sustain our business. Have people fly in. We're not going to provide accommodation, nor are we going to provide a shuttle service, but they're going to have to somehow fly in, get over to our apartment and do what? And then later we were like, you know what? let's see how we can make it happen. Not like, oh, this is impossible because it
Mhm.
sounded impossible, but it went from that to, well, if this were to work, what would it look like? And so we changed our lease. We moved from our 1 bedroom apartment to a 2 bedroom apartment. So we would have a bigger place to actually do this. And we hooked up a bunch of air compressors and we put the air compressor like outside, kind of hidden out in the patio so it wasn't too
Okay.
loud. Put a bunch of IKEA desks in our living room. And we ran a few training sessions and they sold out. And we were like, oh
Wow.
my God, this is selling out. Like, people really need this. And so we did this for 1 year. And then the second year, we were like, you know what? I bet if we were in California, we would do a lot better. And that was because California had a lot of dental schools there. Austin has no dental schools. So people were
Okay.
really going out of their way. And California already has a lot of internationally trained dentists there. So it was like, okay, let's just pack up our stuff in our car and we're gonna drive out to California and we'll figure out how to rent a space, that was its own big challenge. To
Sure.
rent a commercial space for just like 3 months. I think that was probably our lease duration, was 3 months.
Okay.
But we found a perfect person because this florist had expanded her flower shop, but she had much too much space and she wasn't using half the space. And she had
Oh,
to ad out on Craigslist. And we were like, can we use this space for 3 months? She's like, yes, come on in. And we're like, oh my God. Like, it's not, like, commercial spaces are usually like 10-year leases, right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we found this place. And so the second year we did this in LA, in Santa Monica. And yeah, it was totally sold out. We had more space, so we were able to bring in more people and we were packed.
Wow.
And then we were like, okay, this is really great and everything, but it's not exactly the lifestyle we want. And I was so tired after every single live session, just so tired, because you're giving yourself fully to the people that have such an important test to take.
Yeah.
And I was exhausted. Anyway, so my husband starts pushing me like, how can this be done online? And I'm like, this can't be done online. This is dentistry. You learn this in person. He's like, no, no, think about it. There has to be a way where we can teach this online. And I was so stubborn. I was like, no, there isn't. This is dentistry. You learn by looking. This is not the kind of thing you teach online. But that, like, we kept going back and forth on this. And then he was like, okay, well, if this was to be taught online, what would it look like? And so that changes the question in terms of
Yes.
how you're
Yeah.
looking at the question.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, I can see it. So I started conceptualizing it. And so we made an online course around it. And actually, we didn't just make an online course. Before we made the course, we made a sales page and we sold it because I was just like, I don't know, this sounds like tons of work to make it. I'm not going to make it unless I know people are actually going to use it.
Sure.
Put up a sales page, put a price. We said that we set the first course delivery date to, like, I think 2 weeks from that
Okay.
date.
Okay.
And then we sent out an email to our list and we went to the melting pot. And I was so nervous. I was like checking my phone every few minutes. And I don't remember how many courses we said that we needed to sell for us to actually do it. But we sold that while we were having dinner. And I
Nice.
was like,
Nice.
oh my God, I need to now make this thing. And so we did. We did. We released a new module every other day for the next 3 weeks or so.
Okay.
And that was our first cohort. We have a course ever since. And yeah,
Wow.
it's been, we changed a lot in that industry because we were the first to have a dedicated online course and, like, basically teaching dentistry online, which was like not a thing before. So it took a lot of thinking outside of the box and a
Yeah.
lot of nudges from other people. I think I don't think I would have made those little leaps and steps, to get to where we are or where we were. That was like 2013, 14. I wouldn't have been able to do that by myself, for
Sure.
sure not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And then so going through that and then the challenges you had with getting that course put online and the tech issues, which led you to now
Mm,
starting the company that you now start, which is all about helping create, course creators do this without all the hassle, without all the tech issues, and just make it nice and easy for them to put their courses online and give people access to it. And so, yeah, wow. I mean, and so to think
exactly.
that all of this came just from two conversations with Steve, and now
Yeah.
we look at how many lives. Not only have you and your husband's lives been impacted, but all the lives of the people who you helped train so that they could become dentists and
Oh,
follow
yeah.
their passion, and all the lives of the people that they now serve, and the lives of the people that you now serve with the Owlish platform, helping course creators just
Yeah.
do what they do that much easier so they can focus on what they do best and not have to worry about the stuff that they're just not good at, or what have you. And I mean, it's pretty
Exactly. It
fascinating.
shouldn't be so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love it. It's been because like it's the creator economy that's really on the uprise, right? The
Yeah.
creator
Yeah.
economy. And I love it so much. Back when I started, there wasn't that term, but I was part of, the early stages of the creator
Yeah.
economy, which was, yeah, like you create out of what you know, and like you're your own little business. It's not
Yeah.
like you're a big conglomerate, but like that's what it is. And it's just so empowering. And the it's not just empowering for myself, but the impact you make while you are doing that is very substantial, and
Yeah.
it's rewarding. It just gives you more of a sense of purpose. Yesterday, I got an email from somebody that said, "Hey, I'm a friend of this other past client." I remember that client because she came to Santa Monica to train with us. And I was like,
Okay.
oh my God. Like I heard that name. I was like, oh my God, you're friends with her? Like, how is she? Like, I bet she's practicing now. And she goes, yep. She graduated. She was a faculty at Harvard for a little bit, and now she's off to her own thing. I was like, whoa, amazing. Like
Yeah.
that wouldn't have happened. So it's just like, wow,
Yeah.
just very serendipitous. And if you just allow these connections and these things to unfold, because like even for me, my journey, I would have never said, if you asked me in 2012 what I would be doing in 2022, running a SaaS is not it.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
it
Totally.
at all. I'd be like, what is a SaaS? Why
Yeah.
would I do software? I don't know to
Yeah.
code, and I'm not interested in learning that. But look where I'm at. It's so
Right.
cool. And it's just like following the little breadcrumbs ahead of you, like
Yeah.
not having to like know everything into the future. I mean, I love 10-year plans, but you just don't know where
Yeah.
life will take you, and just staying open to that can lead you to amazing destinations, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's something to be said for following our instinct, following our intuition, which that's kind of what, exactly what we've been talking about. That's exactly what you've been doing, and like, running this podcast, a little over a year ago, doing a podcast was not even on my radar at all.
Mm.
I was down in San Diego visiting a friend. We had a lunch conversation, and he ran a podcast and has for a number of years. And he was telling me
Mhm.
how an amazing experience it had been for him. And he's like, Kevin, you would love doing this. And he's like, and especially for you, the guy who's the connector. And he's like, so many things could come from this. And he's like, and you would just love, it's just going to let you talk with more entrepreneurs. He's like, Kev, you love doing that, and he's absolutely
Yeah.
right. And I look at what has transpired since running this podcast. That
Mhm.
it's led well, I mean, you reached out to me because you found out that I ran this podcast. You reached out to me and like, you were just like, Kevin, man, I was looking at your podcast. I would love to do an interview for your podcast if you're open to it.
Yeah.
And so that kind of thing happens. And I've got clients as a result. I've been able to make more connections for people. In fact, now I've interviewed so many people that it's like in these short 20 to 30-minute segments that's on a very unique topic, which is their most valuable relationship. So they get to see a side of these entrepreneurs that most people never see because most people don't ask this question of entrepreneurs. And so it's been kind of cool to be able to say, hey, you know what? I want to connect you with so-and-so, and here's why. But also, I did an interview with them, and go check it out because I think you're really going to like who they are and the way they show up. And it just has become a tool to help me do what I do that much more too, and it
That
was
is
one
amazing.
of one of the people that I interviewed who was like, Kev, you should do this with your podcast and stuff. I'm like, man, what a great idea. And so, this whole idea of just following our intuition, going with what feels right to us, there's so much to be said for that. And
And
so,
staying open. You know that saying, like, when the student is ready, the teacher
yeah,
appears?
yeah, yeah,
Like, I do really believe that. It's not that it necessarily appears, like, you could have met the same person before, but if you weren't ready, you wouldn't have
totally.
heard
Yeah,
the message. And so
absolutely.
when you have this desire of some kind, that's just something. And when the universe knocks on you and says, hey, through another person,
Yeah,
like, what about this? Like, oh, what about this for a work week book? Which, by the way, for me, was the very first nonfiction, non-dental book I've ever read. Not
wow.
even
Wow.
joking. I didn't even know that there was a genre for such books. I was more of like, well, I got to do my studies. Why would I would read some novels here and there because those are fun.
Mhm.
Why would I spend my time reading anything else? Because I don't have time for that. Like, this is my path, it's
Yeah,
all about dentistry. After the 4-hour work week, I listened to tons of books, tons of podcasts. I'm such an avid learner. I became a learner for life, for something that was not just,
yeah,
my career path, which
yeah,
I feel like it has changed me completely as a person.
yeah, totally, totally. Well, Alyssa, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. For anybody listening to this, that's just like, man, Kevin, I love the way Alyssa shows up, the way she is. How can they? I know you mentioned your website, but yeah, give your website or any other resources where people might be able to follow up and learn more about you guys and what you guys are doing.
Yeah. So um I will say that I was on social media kind of things. I was a very private, quiet person. I literally just made my LinkedIn account
Nice.
like a week ago. I just made it. I didn't even put any of the only thing I did there is I uploaded my photo.
There you
I
go. There you go.
Yeah, that's one thing I did. Now I should put in that, like, I'm the co-founder of Alish. I haven't gotten that far yet. But so the only big place I can really think to connect with me is through Alish at this point. I should
Very
really get
good.
my LinkedIn account going. I would love to make some personal connections as well. But if you do want to reach me, just come to Alish, and if you just fill out the contact form or whatever, it actually does come to me.
Nice.
So I
Nice.
am at the other side of that. And Kevin, I know we didn't talk about this before we recorded, but is it okay if I give your listeners a little promo for Owlish if they are
Sure.
interested?
Sure. You bet.
Okay, so let's make it at what should the slug be? $1 million relationships?
Sure. Or just MDR if you want to shorten it up.
Let's do that. MDR. So that'll be owlish.com/MDR for $1 million
Okay.
relationships. And that's
Okay.
Owlish with 2 W's. And that'll give you 2 months free for Owlish. So you can have plenty of time to check us out if you are
Awesome.
interested in making online courses. And yeah, if you shoot us an email
Awesome.
there too, I'm on the other side.
Well, I really appreciate that. And
Yeah.
I tell you, I had to chuckle about your little LinkedIn example there because I am on Facebook. I'm pretty active on Facebook. I am not active on LinkedIn. I've got a profile there, but Honestly, I haven't even looked at it in a long time. I don't even know what it says anymore, even though it's there, and so I can
Yeah.
totally relate. And for the guy who's supposed to be the connector for all these entrepreneurs, and I'm just not even on LinkedIn. It's like, and then I can't tell you how many people have told me over the years, Kev, you should really get more active on LinkedIn, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it, whatever, so just do what you feel is right,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, Alyssa,
Exactly. But I might find you on LinkedIn to
there you
connect with
go.
you.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
Alyssa, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it. And thanks so much for the generous offer for the listeners too. So anybody who's if you're a course creator, if you think you might benefit from what Alyssa and them are doing at Alice, then yeah, I'll include the link with the podcast and stuff to /MDR there. Thank you, Alyssa. That was really nice of you.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, Kevin, and for letting me share my story. It was a blast, and you are a very good interviewer. You just put me right at ease. So thank you for making everything very comfortable
Well,
today.
my pleasure. You are so welcome. All right. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.